Hey everybody, Mallett here with Creation Song Audio and Production, and today we're going to begin a series on audio. Now, audio may seem very daunting when you're first learning how to use a sound system, but all sound systems break down into 5 simple parts. First, you have your input device, which is like a microphone, followed by your control device, which would be your mixer or your soundboard, and then you have an amplification device, which would be power amplifier, and finally an output device, which is your loudspeakers. And then connecting all of these parts are various types of cables. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the various types of cables you'll be using in tech and production. So first off, we'll talk about the XLR cable. Now, XLRs are also called mic cables and are one of the most common cables you'll be using. That they are used for everything from microphones to instruments to speakers themselves. And they're called XLR because within the cable there's 3 individual wires. You have your ground wire, which is X, and then a left and right, which is L and R. And then the other type of cable you'll be using for instruments is a 1/4-inch cable. These are oftentimes, they're called line cables as well, and these are what are used for guitars, for keyboards, for basses, for most instruments. So next we have various types of speaker cables. First off, there are cables called speak-on that have a special barrel connector that twist in, and they're really hard to pull out, so they're super reliable that way. And then there are also 1/4-inch speaker cables that you're usually able to tell the difference between a 1/4-inch speaker and a 1/4-inch line cable because the speaker cables are a lot thicker. And these aren't used as much anymore. That more often than not, you'll either be using a speak-on cable or even an XLR cable for your speakers. These are the main cables you use, but sometimes for some specific situations, you'll use a couple other different types of cables. One of them is a 1/4-inch TRS to an XLR, and they're either a male XLR or a female XLR. These can be used for your auxiliary sends for monitor mixes, depending on what type of connector you have on the board and whether you're using a headphone amp or a wireless transmitter. So I've used both the male and females to TRS in those situations. And then finally we have the various types of power cables. So first off is just your standard Edison or AC cable, which is just a regular extension cord that you may be using. And then there are cables called IEC cables that you're using for guitar amps, for lights, and for other larger equipment you'll be using an IEC cable. And then sometimes for speakers and when you're chaining things together, you'll be using cables called PowerCon. They look very similar to a speak-on cable, but be very careful that you don't get them mixed up because these are specifically for using power. That all they do is carry electricity and could fry your speakers if you use them wrong. So be very careful between speak-on and PowerCon cables. And those are the basic types of cables you'll be using when you are setting up a stage and using a sound system. And then another component of using instruments is that oftentimes you'll need a way to convert from a 1/4-inch to an XLR cable. One of the main ways you do that is by using a direct box or a DI. And these boxes allow you to convert your electric signal from line level to mic level, which means it turns a 1/4-inch cable into an XLR cable. So there are mono direct boxes, which just carry one signal. So these are used for like acoustic, for bass, and other instruments like that. And you can also use these as a way to chain 1/4-inch cables by plugging into the input and then to the output, or sometimes it's labeled through. So you have mono DIs, and then you have stereo DIs. That stereo direct boxes carry 2 signals, and These usually used for keyboards or sometimes electric guitars. And you can also use these in combination with a TRS to a 1/8 inch cable. You're able to use these to connect a computer that you can run click and track, having a left and right channel. And then the final type of direct box we'll go over is the Pod DI, which these little guys are super helpful for running house music because it converts a 1/8 inch signal to an XLR, so you're able to plug it straight into your console. And there you have it, the basic types of cables and direct boxes you'll be using in modern worship.